Bluegrass Jamalong is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. This episode is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, the home of roots music instruction. If you want to improve your playing, join me and thousands of other pickers getting better every day at pegheadnation.com. Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jamalong, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bluegrass Jamalong. I've got something slightly different for you on the podcast today. It's called a Bitesize episode, and what it is a little snippet from another episode. And the reason I'm doing these is I've done well over 100 interviews for the podcast now, and two things really. One is it's tricky for me to sustain doing one a week every week through the year, on top of kind of job and family and other stuff. And I want to keep the quality up rather than just pump out quantity. But the other thing is, there's people new to the podcast who've missed some of the stuff that's out there. And even if you've heard these before, I think it's a nice reminder sometimes. So on the weeks that I don't have a full episode to put out, I'm going to put out a bite size, which is just something from one of the episodes I've done before that you may have missed, you may have forgotten, you might want to have a quick listen to. And they're going to be like 5, 10, 15 minutes. They're not going to be long. And yeah, I'm excited about this. And the first one is a really cool one. Back in March 2023, so nearly 2 years ago now, I put together almost 3 hours of content to celebrate Doc Watson when it would have been his 100th birthday. And that resulted in several episodes. There was two kind of long parts of that. Part one focused on people who'd worked with Doc. So Happy Traum, John McEwen, T. Michael Coleman, Jack Lawrence, Lindsay Craven, who works at Melfest, and Ted Olson, who compiled a box set of Doc's work. And the second episode was focused more on people who'd been inspired by listening to, meeting, watching Doc. And that included Mike Marshall, Tony Trischka, Laurie Lewis, Bryan Sutton, Bob Minner, Scott Nygaard, Critter Eldridge, Jake Eddy, Sid Griffin, Tim O'Brien, and Ketch Secor from Old Crow Medicine Show. And they were all fascinating interviews. I ended up putting a couple of them out as full-length things. And this bite size is from the Jack Lawrence one that I did. And Jack is in part one of these two special episodes, but also I put out the complete interview with Jack as an episode on its own because it was fascinating. And as often is the case when I interview people, we go through a load of stuff, I have a chat, particularly some of the shorter interviews for a thing like this where I'm not talking to everybody for an hour, I'm talking to them for 20 minutes, half an hour maybe. And at the end, there's just a moment, is there anything else you want to tell me? And sometimes the great stuff comes out of those moments. And this is a lovely little story from Jack Lawrence about a D18 that Doc had played on some of his classic records and that he gave to Jack. And it's Jack talking about how he got that guitar from Doc. And just some, it's a beautiful little story. It's full of kind of character and humour and insight into Doc and Jack. And it was a lovely little moment that came out of more than 3 hours of content in the end. And I just wanted to reshare it. If you want to hear the Doc episodes, either for the first time or again, I will stick a link in the show notes, or you can just find them on whatever podcast platform you go for. But there's a link in the show notes, so do check there first. I'll also put a link to the complete interview with Jack that I did, because I think some of you might enjoy that one too. It's fascinating to talk to somebody who spent so much time with someone like Doc, and everybody I interviewed for these episodes was generous and warm and gave me their time when they didn't know who I was, most of them, and they had no reason to talk to me, and they just wanted to talk about Doc. And the love for Doc was kind of just evident in all these conversations. But so yeah, the first bite-sized episode I'm going to share is Jack Lawrence talking about the D18 that he got from Doc. I hope you enjoy this. I really, really enjoyed listening back to this and deciding to put this out as the first one. It gave me a huge amount of pleasure to listen back to this. And I am now going to go back and listen to the full interview with Jack, because a couple of years on I've forgotten most of it. I'm looking forward to that already. So here you go. Here's Jack Lawrence chatting about getting a D18 from Doc Watson.
I own the D18, Martin D18 that Doc used on a bunch of the Vanguard records, On Stage, Home Again, and the Flat and Scruggs Strictly Instrumental. He gave me that guitar, I don't know, 35 years ago. And the way I got it is pretty funny. At Christmas every year, the weekend before Christmas, Doc and I would play at a place in Johnson City, Tennessee, called the Down Home. And it was like our Christmas party. There we'd go over and play 2 shows, turn the house, do 2 shows, and did it the week before Christmas for 25 years. And I would go pick up Doc, drive across the mountain, and we'd do the shows, and I'd come back, usually drogging with one eye closed. We would come back, and I would stay the night with Doc and Rosalie. So on those occasions, I would I'd go out in the kitchen and grab a cup of coffee and go down into Doc's music room. And I noticed in the corner behind his stereo cabinet this old beat up guitar. And so I pulled it out of the corner, and I recognized it as the guitar I'd grown up listening to on his records. And so I dusted, this bridge was coming off of it, and it had 3 strings, and there was a ½ an inch of dust on it. So, I pulled it out, and I dusted it off, and I was plucking on those 2 or 3 strings. And then I took a big sniff of the sound hole. I'm a sound hole sniffer from way back. I love the smell of, the interior of acoustic guitars. And so about the time I took that sniff in the sound hole, Doc was standing in the door, and he said, "What on earth are you doing?" And I told him, "So, well, there's this, I found this guitar in the corner. I think it can be repaired. I think you can fix this up. There's still some music left in this old thing." So he said, "Well, maybe one of these days I'll give it to you." Well, it didn't happen that time. So this repeats itself for, 3-4 years. Get up in the morning, get the coffee, go down and dust it, pluck the strings and sniff the sound hole. And Doc always said, "Well, one of these days I'll give it to you." So he finally did. He finally did one Christmas, and he said, "I just want the Grover Rotomatics tuning machines that are on there." And I said, "Well, give me your wrench and screwdriver. I'll take them off right away." So anyway, I got it home, and it was in worse shape than I imagined once I got a mirror inside. So anyway, it took me a couple of years piddling with it here and there to, doing all the repair work myself. Finally got it back together, and we were doing the Dear Old Southern Home and On Praying Ground records. We did both of those records in 5 days worth of sessions. Anyway, I got it back together, and I thought, this is going to be cool. I'm going to take this guitar. This guitar is going to be on a Doc Watson record again, only with me playing it. So anyway, we're setting up in the studio, and I didn't tell Doc I was bringing it. We're setting up in the studio, and I just laid it in his lap. And as soon as he grabbed the neck, he knew the guitar. And he strummed it and said, "Well, man, you were right. There is still some music left in this guitar. I can't believe it, that it's playable again." And he played on it for about 10 minutes and kept going on about what a good old friend that guitar had been to him, and how he just still loved the tone of that guitar and everything. And I could tell by the look on his face, he's thinking, "I should have fixed that thing. I should have fixed that guitar." And so he was strumming away, and I leaned over and whispered in his ear and said, "Yeah, maybe one of these days I'll give it to you."
And that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to put out some more of these bite-sized ones as we go. I'm going to carry on working on interviews, and I've got some great stuff coming up soon. So do stay tuned. But yeah, I'll put these out in the weeks when there's a gap, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. And that's it. I will see you next time. Have a great week, and happy picking. Bluegrass Jam-Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collinsguitars.com and find out why.